What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. I had a planned 1 week absence for the All Star Dover race. Don't need to revisit that. An unplanned 2 week absence last week, and with it, some very sad news that I will be getting into in this episode, as I have not done an episode, like I said, in 2 weeks to address some of the things that have been happening in the NASCAR. So our storylines today are going to be a lot of catch up, and then I will be moving on to the normal weekly routine. Still going to try and keep this episode short for you guys. So let's get right into it. Obviously, the biggest storyline since I've last had an episode, and I think it will continue to be the biggest ongoing storyline in NASCAR this year. One of the greatest drivers of all time, maybe the greatest, Kyle Busch, unexpectedly passed away. I don't want to talk about necessarily the situations that caused it, but more or less my condolences to the family. Two young children and a wife. It was awesome to see them with the courage to be there at Charlotte and participate, both his wife and children and his older brother Kurt and his parents, seeing all of them there. It's not an easy thing to do just 3 days after such a 3 days after your family member passes, to be in such a public display of grieving together. And it's a loss that weighs heavy on the sport, especially with how unexpected it was. And it's just an awful thing. I don't really care right now to talk about the what happens with RCR. Who drives that car, the number getting pushed away. It's a cool thing to tell Brexton that nobody gets to drive it unless it's him. But I will also say that's a lot of pressure to put on him. Um, I do think Brexton has that racing DNA in him as well. There was a lot of awesome moments to see of the community rallying around them, rallying around everybody that's affected by this. It's a loss and an absence that is going to weigh heavy on the NASCAR community. Kyle Busch did so much for this sport. Um, you're going to hear a lot of drivers' stories and tributes. You've already heard them in the week following what has happened, and you're going to continue to hear it because Kyle Busch Motorsports, right? The Truck Series, all the he. You talk about Rowdy on the track, Kyle Busch off the track. He influenced and helped so many of the drivers that are across all three series, and I think you're going to continue to see that more and more people have stories about him and for him. And obviously, when I was growing up, Kyle Busch was like the guy in NASCAR. Yeah, I had Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, but Kyle Busch, everybody knew who Kyle Busch was. Everybody knew who drove the 18 M&M's car. A lot of people I knew that didn't watch NASCAR a lot, they said, I like the M&M's car because it was M&M's and the man behind the wheel. Kyle Busch, like I said, just so much good for this sport. Rowdy was so good. At one point, I think NASCAR needs somebody that relishes being the villain like Kyle Busch did. He maybe not the villain, maybe I should say heel, but he relished being the heel in NASCAR. Some of the best one-liners of all time, always gave a good interview, and that's something I don't think we have a lot of right now. I don't think there's too many drivers with that type of brash personality, and you either love them or you hate them, and um, just an unimaginable, unexpected event that happened, death that occurred, and a loss that will forever leave a hole in a lot of NASCAR fans and drivers and just the whole entire community's heart. But now let's get into the rest of it. That is my tribute to Kyle Busch. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I can't put it in better words than a lot of the people you've heard giving tributes and telling their stories. Denny Hamlin did a great job. I think Brad Keselowski, despite their rivalry, did a great job. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but those are my 2 cents, of which a lot of people are offering 2 pennies about Kyle Busch. Those are mine. Let's get into some of these other storylines that I've missed. Again, the last race I did in episode 4 was going into Watkins Glen. I haven't reviewed Watkins Glen. I'm not going to talk about Dover that much for reasons I've talked about on previous podcast episodes. And I also have to talk about Charlotte before getting into the Nashville stuff. So we have a lot to catch up on. Most notably, Daniel Suarez winning the Coca-Cola 600 wasn't having a great day. Used strategy and a little bit of luck from Mother Nature. Did have to hold off faster drivers for a couple laps. which does take skill. But for the most part, Daniel Suarez and that team saw an opportunity to take a risk, and they won the race. And yeah, there's a meaningful thing that it was a number 7 from Spire Motorsports. Obviously, Kyle Busch won his last race in the truck series for Spire Motorsports, driving the 7. Um, and there was some cool moments, a cool moment with Daniel Suarez. You could see how much it meant to him. Daniel Suarez, somebody that's bounced around a lot, and I don't think it's always fair. I love to see him outrunning Trackhouse because it seems like there's some animosity there. Inspire has 2 race wins, which is more than Trackhouse has this season. Not that it's a head-to-head thing. Spire has 2 of their drivers in the top 10 in points. But again, as much as I have respect for Daniel Suarez and respect for the fact that he wins one race almost every year, been almost every other year, like he's usually, in the playoffs, he's a good driver that deserves to stay somewhere for a long time. Maybe he can do that at Spire. He is a very nice person. I feel like he has a good personality. He knows when he needs to turn it on, when he needs to turn it off. But this is an issue I have with NASCAR. Running way too many caution laps across all the series. Fans don't want to see cars run around and under the yellow flag. They want to see them race. I would rather them red flag races than them run 8 to 10 caution laps. If you have to clean up wrecks or to get stuff going, pause the field and get it go. Like, there's no reason why stage breaks should be more than 3 to 4 caution laps. 1 cool down lap, the second lap pit road opens, everybody can come down and pit. The third lap we go around, do the choose rule, and then we're going green. I don't understand why we're doing so many caution laps in all the series. It's ridiculous. It needs to end. And how this pertains to Daniel Suarez's win. We could have potentially gotten the Coca-Cola 600 in. I mean, you got to think how much slower caution laps are than green flag laps. And there were so many cautions where I just felt like it went on way too long. And we had 25 laps that didn't get run, 26 laps that didn't get run. Like, come on. And also, the other thing with all of these caution laps I think NASCAR wants all of these shootouts. Like, there's been a couple races where people dominate, and you see it on the road courses all the time. But I'm sick and tired on ovals of late cautions causing scrambles. I think in 5 laps, can you get lucky? I think we need to remove more luck out of the sport of NASCAR because I'm tired of seeing people that haven't been in the picture all day say we're going to stay out or take 2 tires and we're going to be in the front and win this race. And I'm like, yes, there should be open room for strategy, but it feels like 80 to 90% of NASCAR races, somebody's getting screwed over by late cautions or something similar to that effect. And I hate that. Daniel Suarez, good on him for holding off cars for a couple of laps. He did get a caution to help him before the race ultimately ended. And good for them for making the strategy pay. But quite frankly, in my opinion, remember there was a caution for weather, and then they kind of red flagged for a little bit, and then we went racing again. They have the weather. Why not just say, you know what, we're going to go caution, and we're not going until we know we can fit the race in. And just like, it makes no sense to me to allow that to even happen. The race should have ended on the first weather caution rather than running like single-digit laps afterwards and then canceling anyway, because you completely messed up the points. You completely messed up the days people had. I don't want to say Daniel Suarez doesn't deserve to win this race, but I kind of feel like luck played way too much of a factor, and that's been happening way too much in NASCAR. The Toyotas deserved it. There was 5 Toyotas that were clearly heads and shoulders above the field. Kyle Larson was kind of in that mid-range. And the fact that none of them win the race despite doing what they needed to do to put themselves up front consistently over the course of a race. Somebody whose average running position was outside of 20 got to take advantage of multiple weather cautions to win the race. Doesn't sit right with me. I have no problems with Daniel Suarez personally, but the way he won this race, I have a massive issue with and think NASCAR needs to change the way they do things. And I'll leave it at that. Let me know in the comments below if you think I'm a bad person. Let me know if you agree. Let me know your thoughts on that. It's good for Daniel Suarez, but this is a crown jewel race. You need to take as much gimmicks as you can out of your crown jewel races, especially when one of them in the Daytona 500 is just a complete crapshoot and luck half the time because everybody wrecks each other and everybody's fuel saving. Like, we need to restore the luster and the difficult and the beauty of some of these crown jewel races that I feel like NASCAR is losing because rule changes, package changes, and all of these caution laps. I'm going to move on. Let's talk about this third point here. Shane Van Gisbergen does expected at Watkins Glen, dominated, made a incredible drive up from outside the top 20 after pitting with 20 laps ago, and just wins the race easily, picks up a whole bunch of points. Shane Van Gisbergen, we know he can do it on the road courses. That was an impressive road course win. You saw other people, break some rough stretches. Somebody like Chase Briscoe getting in the top 5. Briscoe had a solid day. Zilic almost had his best day of the season, and then obviously had to come back down for for tires going down. A lot of good days at the Glen for people that needed them. Kyle Larson, obviously somebody that had a bad day. But the question is, can Shane Van Gisbergen do good enough on the oval? His oval prowess, will he be good enough to make the playoffs on just road courses? What can he do on ovals? Well, last week, yeah, maybe there wasn't real qualifying, and that helped him get a good starting spot. But he stayed in the top 10 to 12 pretty much the whole race, led some laps after pit strategy, did fall back, had maybe the best oval race I've seen Shane Van Gisbergen have. And he's outrunning his teammate Ross Chastain, who was a multiple-time winner and has even won this race last year, in reference to the Coca-Cola 600. He's outrunning Connor Zilic, who's a rookie, okay. But Shane Van Gisbergen kind of consistently has been outrunning Ross Chastain on a lot of these ovals. Maybe SVG has figured it out. My favorite conspiracy theory that I saw some NASCAR fans spreading online is that Trackhouse was tired of hearing about SVG sucking on road courses, so they're giving him Ross Chastain's car, and Ross Chastain has to drive SVG's car. I don't think that's necessarily true, but SVG, if he's this good on ovals, he's a threat to break into that top 10 on points. We'll see if the consistency is there the rest of the summer until the playoffs. But that was an impressive race in the Charlotte 600 for somebody that usually struggles at ovals. A big thing that I've seen the last couple weeks, maybe even really the last couple months in NASCAR, how do you minimize bad days? Whether it's when you don't have speed, finding a way to get, a top 10, 15 finish, or how to minimize mistakes on pit road, and how to minimize wrecking and putting yourself in bad spots. You see somebody like Chase Briscoe, who's currently 15 in points when his speed should have him top 10. They don't minimize bad days. They have a lot of DNFs. They've wrecked a lot. They've had some pit road troubles. Chase Briscoe has had speeding issues, and that's why they're in 15th despite having speed. And then you see other people like Chris Buescher, who finds ways to get good finishes. I know he got caught up in a wreck on Sunday, but you see people like Chris Buescher who finds a way to always get good days, maximize their day. William Byron, to an extent, has done it. I would even argue, like Christopher Bell has found a way to get back into the top 10 in points and minimize bad days where you're still getting enough points. You can move up point standings because other people can't maximize their bad days. And a lot of the theme of this NASCAR season has been to me, how do you bring yourself to good finishes when you don't have the speed? And how can you have clean days where you're not making mistakes? And I think that's why you're seeing some names that you don't normally see towards the top 10 in points because of those reasons. This was some great intermediate racing. I think, I've heard people talk about the tire compound. It looks like it was good. This was excellent racing at Charlotte. I hope the intermediate racing continues to be that way. The very memorable moment of good racing was at the end of the third stage. You saw Tyler Reddick and the 4 JGR cars all within a second for quite a long time racing each other. Spots going, people going back, people going front, all kinds of crazy stuff happening. It was just awesome intermediate racing. And I hope that continues, as intermediates are the most common track in NASCAR. Excuse me, sorry. And it also is why Charlotte went back to 2 ovals instead of having the Roval in the playoffs, and that is also exciting to me. My last point here is, what does Toyota know? Is Chevy struggling that much with the new bodies? I don't know, but Toyota has been super dominant, and they were dominant on Sunday. Yes, they didn't get the race win for some aforementioned reasons, but clearing away the top 5 cars were Toyota. Just masterclass. Toyota seems like they've been faster than everybody on the intermediates all year, and I'll be interested to see if that continues. All right, that's enough talking about the storylines. I've caught up on most of the stuff I wanted to get caught up on. Let's get into what actually matters. This week, this Sunday, Nashville, in the 4 next-gen races. Toyota, I was just giving them praise, has not won. Chevy and Ford have both won twice. Chase Elliott in 2022 won the first next-gen race here. Ross Chastain in 2023. And then the last 2 races in 2024 and 2025 have gone to Team Penske, Joey Logano, and Ryan Blaney. Best average finish, Denny Hamlin with 6. Kyle Larson with 6.3. Zane Smith has run well here. He has not raced in all 4 next-gen races, but his average finish is still 7.5. Joey Logano at 8.3. And Carson Hocevar, after 2 races and a second-place finish last year, is at 9.0. So, if you do some quick math, that means he finished 16th in his other race, second in his first race. That comes down to a 9 average finish in 2 races, but still technically top 5 after his first 2 races here in the Cup Series. Most top 5s, 6 drivers are tied at 2. Hamlin, Larson, Logano, Blaney, Elliott, and Chastain. Pretty big names. The names you would expect on a concrete oval like Nashville to be near the front. 6 drivers are tied at 1 top 5. Zane Smith, Carson Hocevar, Ryan Preece, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, and Chris Buescher. You're seeing a lot more Fords. This type of track, I think, plays into what Ford's strong suit has been in the next-gen car, and you haven't seen a lot of Fords at the front of races recently. I expect that to change this week. You've seen a lot of Toyota and a little bit of Chevy. Most top 10s, Kyle Larson all by himself with 4. And then the other drivers of note, 4 drivers are tied at 3. Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, and Denny Hamlin. Kyle Larson, the only driver that has been in the top 10 every next-gen race at Nashville, and still doesn't have the best average finish, still narrowly missing out to Denny Hamlin. So who are my favorites to win Nashville this week? Well, my team rankings, Team Penske, they've won the last 2 races. I think this is a good track for Ford in general. Team Penske, give me them to be the favorites to win this week and get some of their drivers off of these cold spells. Hendrick Motorsports, I have second. They have a race win here. Kyle Larson has been fast here. Hendrick Motorsports, number 2. Joe Gibbs Racing, 3. They haven't won here. They're Toyota's best chance, usually. Although 23XI has been good this year. Joe Gibbs Racing, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell should do well at this type of track. 23XI. I normally wouldn't have them this high at Nashville, but they have found speed at every single track they've gone to this year, and I just don't think it's fair to count them out when they're having speed at every single track NASCAR has gone to. So give me 23XI because of just the overall strength they've shown this season, even if historically they haven't done well at this track in the next-gen era. And then RFK Racing, maybe it's disrespectful to put them at 5. Preece has good finishes here. I think Buescher and Keselowski both like this style of track. I wouldn't be shocked to see all 3 RFK cars running in the top 10 at points in this race. So maybe a little bit disrespectful to have them 5, but I do think RFK should bring a lot of speed this week at Nashville. My individual driver rankings, I think Ryan Blaney is the favorite. Still only has 1 race win, trying to get closer to these guys at the top of the point standings. He's had just an okay average last couple of weeks. A race win could get the momentum going back in the right direction for the 12 team. Denny Hamlin, the king of just missed wins in the next gen era, just missed out on another one, was about to win at Charlotte last week. Couple cautions, change up strategy, and he was in the middle of passing Daniel Suarez in a corner when the caution flag came out that ended the race. So Denny Hamlin, super hot, trying to run down Tyler Reddick. I don't know if he's going to run him down, but they've been pretty even as of late. If you look at the points gap between the two of them, Denny Hamlin has the best average finish at this track. He's got to be one of the favorites. The man with the second best average finish at this track still doesn't have a win. Kyle Larson had a good rebound week last week. I think he's going to continue that rebound. Still looking for the first race win of the season for Kyle Larson, and it's rare that you make it to May 31st and Kyle Larson doesn't have a win. This could very well be the week he does it. Christopher Bell has had speed all year, hasn't been getting the finishes. He got a finish that represented the speed he had last week. He's been heating up the last couple races. I think we could see a culmination and a victory this week at a track he's usually pretty good at and a track style he's usually pretty good at. William Byron hasn't been the William Byron of the last 2 seasons, but I have him 5th. I think Hendrick likes these type of tracks. Hendrick has won here. Hendrick, I think, is fast here. William Byron is finding a way to get good finishes. I think it finally culminates, and he has the ability at a good week this week. Joey Logano may be a little bit disrespectful to have him this low. He's been struggling. He's not in the playoffs right now. He's outside of the playoff bubble. Joey Logano, always, it seems like in this next gen era, always seems to find a win when he needs it most. He needs one pretty dang bad. He won here in 2024. I think Joey Logano, arguably disrespectful to have him number 6. That's more represents the season he's having than what I think he's capable of this weekend. Joey Logano, definitely a name to look out for. Bubba Wallace has had some success at Nashville. He's been good here. If you look at the next gen stats, he's usually top 6 or 7 in most of them. I think he has a real chance at a top 10 finish and with the ability to get back into the top 10 in points this weekend. Tyler Reddick hasn't shown much at this track, and it's risky to put him up here. I put Tyler Reddick on here instead of Chase Elliott, somebody who's won at this track and been very good here. But I didn't, because Tyler Reddick is having a phenomenal season and deserves to be on this list. His worst finish is 15th. He seems to always have speed, even at multiple tracks he hasn't been good at in the next gen car. He's found speed at this year. I think it's no different this week. Tyler Reddick right now cannot be counted out of any race. Brad Keselowski has been good at these style tracks. Ford has been very good at Nashville. I think Brad Keselowski should be in the top 10 all day, and I think his teammate Chris Buescher should be right here with him. Even Ryan Preece has a good finish. Really, any of the RFK cars, I wanted to put all 3 of them in here, but it's so hard because it's so competitive at the front of the field. And I put Carson Hocevar here. His Spire's getting more and more consistent speed. They've had speed at this type of track this season. Hocevar finished 2nd here last year. Carson Hocevar has a chance to win the 2nd race of the season and the 2nd race of his career. They know how to get 2nd. They were the bridesmaids last year. Can they be the bride this year? All right, quickly, I'm trying to keep this episode to the same normal time. We spent a lot of time yapping at the beginning, so I'm going to go through standings and power rankings pretty quickly for everybody. Regular season standings, Reddick still has over a 100-point lead in 1st. Denny Hamlin staying in that 90 to 120th region, right? He kind of fluctuates from week to week, but he's roughly staying put with Tyler Reddick in 2nd. Ryan Blaney, after rebounding from a tough pit stop last week, is quietly in 3rd, and I feel like you haven't seen him up front a lot. There is a 50-point gap between him and Denny, so Denny is kind of starting to separate himself as well. Ty Gibbs, after a solid week, is up to 4, 21 points back of Blaney. And rounding out the top 5, despite wrecking out and DNFing, Chase Elliott is still 5th in points, only 2 back of Ty Gibbs. Then there's another decent-sized gap down to Kyle Larson in 6th, the highest-ranked winless driver so far this season. Chris Buescher, despite a DNF, is only 1 point back of Kyle Larson in 7th. Christopher Bell has climbed the standings the last couple weeks. He's now up to 8th after being as low as 12 or 13th. He's 20.4 points back of Buescher. Hocevar, after a couple of less than spectacular weeks, didn't get the finishes he desired, is all the way down to 9th after being as high as 6th. He is at 356 points, which is 5 back of Christopher Bell. And Daniel Suarez, after winning last week, has an even 350 points in 10th place, the lowest. He's the lowest current winner in the point standings. He is 270 points back of 1st and Tyler Reddick. Shows you how incredible of a season Tyler Reddick is having. In fact, the gap between Tyler Reddick and 3rd place Ryan Blaney is larger than the gap between 3rd place Ryan Blaney and the playoff cut line in 16th. And that tells you how much. So, there's a lot of jammed up names here in the middle, but Daniel Suarez rounds out the top 10 after he gets in the victory lane this week. Brad Keselowski still having a solid season. He got booted out for Daniel Suarez in the top 10, but Brad Keselowski is only 7 back in 11th. William Byron still in 12th. We're 14 weeks into the season, and William Byron is in 12th in points. Didn't expect that coming into the year, but he's not that far back of many of the names ahead of him that he thinks he should be outrunning. Bubba Wallace in 13th. He continues to bleed points after a great first 6 weeks of the season that saw him in second. Shane Van Gisbergen up to 14 after 2 great points races in Watkins Glen and Charlotte. He's at 316. He is a solid plus 28 on the cut line. Chase Briscoe is in 15th. He could be even higher up in this list. Give him, you think, 20 to 30 more points after he DNF'd and to finish where he was, 25 more points, and he'd be up with Bubba Wallace and William Byron, but he DNF'd. He's at 304 points, which is one above Ryan Preece in 16 at 303. And that rounds out your 16 playoff drivers. 17, Austin Cindric, the first driver out of the playoffs, 15 back of Ryan Preece at 288. Joey Logano at 274 has a quite large gap to make up if he wants to make the playoffs of 29 points. AJ Allmendinger sticking around in the top 20, quietly putting together solid days. He had a good points day at Watkins Glen, was solid at Charlotte. He's at 254. And Michael McDowell, the third Spire car, quite a ways behind his teammate with 248 points. He's quite a ways back of the playoff cut line as well. But I think the points move more drastically this season than they normally do. And I think that's a credit to partially how they redid the points this year. And here you see my power rankings. Reddick and Hamlin, no change. Gibbs moves up to 3rd. Blaney down to 4th. Larson in 5th. Chase Elliott dropping all the way to 6th after a DNF. Bell up to 7th. I have Hocevar in 8th, although he's in danger of dropping. Buescher could be in front of him, but Buescher wrecked out. He's in 9th. Daniel Suarez with the win puts him in 10. Normally I would move a winner up higher into the power rankings, especially one that's top 10 in points. But the aforementioned circumstances around the win is why I'm hesitant to move them too much higher up. I think they've been qualifying well, but they're not always getting good finishes. But for now, I'm leaving Daniel Suarez at 10. Shane Van Gisbergen at 11. He could break into the top 10 if he has another solid week on an oval this week. And if he does, I think alarm bells need to be ringing because it could mean Shane Van Gisbergen's about to have a really good season. Byron's holding steady in 12. Chase Briscoe holding steady in 13. Brad Keselowski in 14. Byron, Briscoe, and Keselowski, and even my 15th in the power rankings, Bubba Wallace, I think are all in very similar situations. All feel like they have the ability to be top 10 in points and all just on the outside for one reason or another. Ryan Preece in 16th after DNFing or getting caught up in a wreck that he had no part of, really. Joey Logano struggling. I have him 17th in the power rankings. He's not usually down there. Zane Smith with a solid week, moving into 18th, getting into the top 20, going to a track that he likes and has had some very good finishes and some very good races at in the past. Austin Cindric falling down to 19th after a rough week, and I'm leaving AJ Allmendinger at 20. Has had one good points day, one okay day for colleague racing, leaving AJ Allmendinger at 20th in my power rankings. That's all I have for you guys today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. A lot of great sports on. We have the Stanley Cup final is set. The NBA finals are almost set. Regionals for college baseball is always such a fantastic weekend. NASCAR's on, MLB's on. Great weekend for sports. So please make sure you find a couch and watch some sports this weekend. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. It's a crazy world out there. Peace out.